This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Lamid Dalid. We're holding on the bottom of Lamid Gimel Amid Beis. We are 3 lines from the bottom as the Gemara continues to explain and quoting the previous brisa that we're middle of discussing, which of course will come full circle in a moment or two. So we begin, says the Gemara, Kidmu Bale Chayvais V'Higbiya Bein Chavat Shloi Hizik Bein Hizik Ad Shaloi Chav. Says the Brisa that if the Baal Chayv collects, if the Baal Chayv comes early and he collects the shar, whether the Chayv was before the damage, whether the Chayv was after the damage, it is nothing, meaning that which the Baal Chayv collected is nothing. Lo asa v'lo klum. Why? Lefish ein mishalem ela megufay. The payments is only made megufay, and therefore the Baal Chayv has no rights to collect before the nizik, he who got damaged, takes this animal in payment for the damages. Says the Gemara, let's understand this in the last line of Lamed Gimel Amid Beis. Bish Lamed Hizik Ad Shloi Chav. If the damages happened before there was this debt, again, Ruvain damages Shimon, and then Ruvain also owes Levi money. Levi is coming and collecting the ox of Ruvain in payment for the debt, and the problem is Shimon, whose ox was damaged, wants to collect his ox in payment for the debt. So says the Gemara, if the damages happened and only afterwards Ruvain borrowed and now owes money to Levi, then Nizakin Kadmu. That's obvious that the Nizakin, of course, come first. But in the flip side case, if the was first a debt, Levi lent Ruvain money and Ruvain owes Levi money from 6 months ago. Then ask the Gemara, I don't understand. Baal Chayv Kadam. Then Levi, the Baal Chayv, should come first. So if he collects it, seemingly, he should keep it. Why are we saying not? Says the Gemara, as we turn over to Lamed Daled Amid Aleph, explains the Gemara. 1 second, let's just get ourselves positioned correctly. Yeah, says the Gemara. Lamed Daled Amid Beis V'afilu. Continuing asking, and even if you're going to tell Hizik Ad Shloi Chav Baal Chayv Kadam, and even if you're going to tell me in the case of that the Hizik was first, V'afilu Hizik Ad Shloi Chav Baal Chayv Kadam. Ask the Gemara, the Baal Chayv was Kadim. He, in practicality, came first. So if he came, even if his debt was later, but he came and he grabbed the animal. So why isn't that enough of a reason for him to keep it? Says the Gemara, rather we must see a yisaid going on over here. Shema mina, what do we learn? Baal Chayv me'ochar shekadam ve'gava. A latter Baal Chayv that comes and collects, Mashe Gava, Loi Gava. Says the Gemara, is that what we're learning? Is that true? That if a latter Baal Chayv comes and collects, it's considered as if he's not able to collect? And as Rashi in the second line says, Bitmiya, can this really be what we're proving from here? It can't be. So says the Gemara, Loi Lameim Lacha, Mashe Gava, Gava. Really, you're right. And if a latter Baal Chayv comes and collects, he's able to keep. V'shayni hasam. But shayni hasam, which really means hacha, our case is different. Case of the goring, Damar lei. Why is it different? Because the nizik, he who got damaged, tells the mazik, ilu gabachave. If you would have had this, would I not have been able to collect it from it? Of course I would have. Because the cases of damages are different. Why? Because the ox that damaged, the ox itself, that is the place in which I, the nizik, am able to collect from. That is my place of collecting. That is the reason why the other guy cannot come and take from there first. And for there we continue with another brisa. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara Lamed Daled Amud Aleph. 6 lines down. Tanu Rabbanan. Shar Shavah Masayim Shenagil Shar Shavah Masayim. V'chava bo chamishim zos. One axe worth 200 gores, another axe worth 200 zos. And the chavala, the damages, were 50 zos. What does that mean? That means that the ox decreases and now is only worth 150 zos. But then v'shavach va'amad al arba me'ay zos. And then afterwards, the ox of the nizik goes and is worth 400 zos. So again, started off being worth 200 zos. The damages were 50 zos, then it was only worth 150. But then the price of that ox went up, and now it's worth 400. What is the din? Shel malei, excuse me, shel malei lo yiziku oymir al shamayna me'ozos. Says the Gemara, if there was no damages, what would it have been worth? It's true. Now it is worth 400. It did go up. But if it wasn't damaged, it would have been worth more. It would have been worth 800 zos. So what's the halacha? Says the Gemara, Noisein kishas hanezek. He has to pay at the time of the damages, meaning he has to pay the 50 zuz that he did. You pay chatzi nezek of that, and he has to give him 25 zuz. Kochash kishas hamad bedin. What about in the flip side case? What about if the animal depreciated in value from the time of the hamad bedin? The animal that got damaged went down, and now it's worth, let's say, only 100 or 50. Then he as well has to pay, says Rashi, the value of the animal now at the time of the hamad bedin, and therefore, let's say now it's only worth 50. You got to pay 150 zuz of damages, which is 75. Case A of the brisa. Case B, shavach mazik. Let's say the mazik's animal increased, and therefore, who cares if the mazik's animal increased? So the reason why we care is because we just finished saying that where does the nizik collect his damages from? The nizik collects from the shar of the mazik. So if the shar of the mazik increased in value, there's a thought to say that maybe if the shar of the mazik increased in value, maybe now the nizik gets to collect more because the ox of the damage is worth more. So shavach hamazik, says the Gemara, noisein like shas hanezik. You still pay the shas of the nezek. You pay what the animal is worth at the time of the damages. Kachash kishas hamad bedin. So that's our brisa. And now in classical Gemara form, we're going to dissect and explain the brisa piece by piece. So we begin, Amar Mar, says the Gemara, let's begin with the end of the brisa. Shavach mazik noisein kishas hanezek. You pay at the time of the damages. Asks the Gemara, Mani, whose shita is this? This is Rabbi Yishmaeli. Tamar, what does Rabbi Yishmael say about chayvu? V'zuzi ude masik lei. This goes back to what we learned a day ago. That Rabbi Yishmael says that when Ruvain damages Shimon, Ruvain owes Shimon money. But it's a simple owing of money. Shimon doesn't now own my animal that damaged him. He might collect from that animal. But the mazik, Ruvain's obligation towards Shimon is what? Is Zuzi, is money. So if my animal goes up in value, he can't tell me, hey, wait, your animal went up in value and therefore you have to pay me more. No, it's all Zuzi. But then, let's look at that into the Bryce. So that's a Kachash. Kshas hamad bedin, that when it goes down in value, pays them hamad bedin. Who does that go like? Asyan, the Rabbi Akiva, Tamar Shotfininu, who says they are Shotfim, that the nizik is considered a part owner in my animal, and therefore, if the animal goes down in value, he incurs that loss, and he has to only collect from the time of the hamad bedin. So the Gemara asks, the obvious kasha, Reisha Rabbi Yishmael, V'sefer Rabbi Akiva. Answers the Gemara, Loi. I'll explain to you really cooler Rabbi Akiva. Everyone's going according to the sheet of Rabbi Akiva, who says what again? That the nizik has an actual bailus, has a part ownership in the animal of the mazik after the damages from the fact that that's where he collects from. So kula Rabbi Akiva, says the Gemara. And what is the case that we are discussing? That what is the reason why the value of the ox, of the mazik, of he who damage went up in value? It didn't just happen on its own. It's not that the market value increased drastically in that amount of time. No. What happened is that the mazik, pitim, he fattened up the animal, and therefore it was his own action, and therefore that is not something that is shared by the nizik. Asks the Gemara, 1 second, what do the Reisha say? For 1 second. Now, if the case is where the owner of which is the mazik fanned up the ox, do you have to tell me that he pays based on that value? Of course he does. So Amar Rav Papa explains Rav Papa, Reisha mishkachasla bein de pitma petumi bein de shivcha memela. The Reisha you could say is either case. Veitzrich lashmi'inan, why the hecha de shivcha memela nois kishas nezek. That's what the Mishnah is teaching me. That if it didn't come through his fattening, but rather it came on his own, then you pay kishas nezek. The seifa has to be a case of pitma, that the owner fattened up the ox. Says the Gemara, and we conclude this first part of today's shir, explaining the beginning of the brisa that said, Kachash, if it went down in value, kishas amadabedin. Asks the Gemara, Kachash machmas mai. He worked the animal, lemalei. I don't understand. If it went deteriorated due to work, then the mazik could say, I don't understand. You deteriorated my animal and I have to pay for that deterioration. You deteriorated the nizik's animal. Again, Reuven damaged Shimon, and the Shimon's animal was 50 zuz of damage. And then the animal went down to 50 zuz. So it has another 100 zuz of damage. How did it depreciate? If it happened because the nizik made that happen, so the mazik says, why do I have to pay for that? So Amar Rav Ashi explains to Rav Ashi, the kochash machas maka. No, it had to do with the maka, the goring. Damar lei, and therefore Shimon says to Reuven, you have to pay for the deterioration. Karna de turach kabira li bay. That the horn of your ox is buried in my ox, and that's the reason why the ox is going down in value even after the act of goring. That is the reason why the mazik is liable to incur and to pay for those damages that seemingly happened even after the act of mazik, hezek. Continues the Gemara, the Mishnah on the bottom of Lamed Aleph and Aleph, Shar Shaveh Masayim, Shenagar Shar Shaveh Masayim, Veina Nevela, Yafeh Klum. So what do you do? Amar Meir al Zenemar, Umachroi, Es Ashar Achai, V'chatzu Es Kasboi. Says Rameir, when the animal is not worth anything, that's where we say you sell it and then divide the money. Armle Rav Yehuda v'chein halacha, that is the halacha keyemes. Umachus ashar chai v'chatzu es kasvei. V'lo kai, excuse me, asks Rav Papa v'chein halacha, that what kiyamta umachus ashar chai v'chatzu es kamtoi, but lo kiyamta v'gamas hameis yachatzon. There's another pasuk that seems to say you split up the mace. Ve'ezeh, what case is referring to? A different case. Zeshar Shava Masayim, Shokashar Shava Masayim, Vanavili of Chamishim Zos, Shazen Otel Chatzi Achai, Chatzi Hameis, Otel Chatzi Achai, Vachatzi Ha-Meis. We're going to have to see in the Gemara what exactly the Shita of Rav Yehuda is. So says the Gemara, begins right away by quoting a Brisa, which really picks up the conversation from the Mishnah. Taner Rabbanan Shor Shava Masayim, Shor Shava Masayim. Vanavili of Chamishim Zos, Otel Chatzi Achai, Vachatzi Hameis, Otel Chatzi Achai, Vachatzi Hameis. V'zehu Shar Amar V'Teira Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This is the shar of the Torah, and this is Rabbi Yehuda. This is Shitas Rabbi Yehuda that we saw in the Mishnah. Comes along Rabbi Meir Oimer, says Rabbi Meir, Ein zeh shar ha'amar v'Torah. No, this is not the shar that the Torah talks about. El shar shaveh masayim shenagel shar shaveh masayim ve'ein ha'nevila yofeh klum, and the nevila is not worth anything. Al zeh ne'emar, on this it says, Umachrus ashar chai v'chatzu es kaspoi. Ella, so says Rameir, 1 second, mani mekayim v'gam semiz yechetzon, on the last narrow line, pachash abichzai misa mechatzin, that the value that the animal mechatzin b'chai, the value that the animal went down, that is the amount that you have to split up between them. That is how Rameir explains the pasuk. Says the Gemara, let's understand what's really going on in this machlokes. Michti, bein the Rameir in the first white line, bein the Rameir ben the Rav Yehuda, hai meyo ve'esrim v'chamisha shakil, both according to Rameir and according to Rav Yehuda, that what? 200 gores, 200, and the nevela is worth 50. Hai meyo ve'esrim v'chamisha shakil, hai meyo ve'esrim v'chamisha shakil. Each one takes 125 zuz, and they both suffer a loss of 75 zuz, which is chatzi nezek. The damages were 150, so they both have to lose 75, meaning the mazik pays 75, which essentially means that the nizik loses 75. So my bin. Whoa, we just lost the page. I apologize. Let's go back. So v'hai me'av esrim chavisha shakel. So my bin ayu. So says the Gemara, what is the machlokes Rameir and Rav Yehuda? Amar Rava, explains Rava, Pchas nevela ikebeinayu, at the crux of the machlokes Rameir and Rav Yehuda is the depreciation. Rameir is Pchas nevela the nizik ave, that goes to the nizik. Yehuda's Pchas nevela the mazik, it goes to the mazik have palga, that which the animal appreciates, that is the half, that is the mazik have palga, that it goes to the mazik. Amrei Abaye, that's how Rava explained. Abaye asked on Rava, Imkain, Matzinu Rav Yehuda, comes out that according to Rav Yehuda, as we turn over to Lamedal and Mabis, Tam Chamor Mimud. In a way, he says the Gemara, according to Rav Yehuda, it comes out that a tam can even more chamer than a muad. Why? Because regarding a muad, the nizik incurs all the losses of the damaged, of the depreciation of the animal. And over here we're saying, Rav Yehuda says, that the mazik shares the damages of the depreciation in the case of a muad. So says the Gemara, how could it be that the tam is coming out more chamer than the muad? Tam chamer muad. V'chitim on the top of Lamed on the base. Maybe you'll suggest hachanami. Yeah, it's true that there are times that a tam is more chamer than a muad. Kedetinan, like we learned in a Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda mechayiv. V'chachamim poiter, in a case we have the animal that was guarded, but not a good guarding, and then it goes and it gores. Rabbi Yehuda omer tam chayiv umuad poiter. If it was a tam and therefore the owner had no reason to assume the animal was going to gore, therefore you're chayiv. But if it's a muad, then you're going to be potter. Says the Gemara. And if very important, just look at the last white line in Rashi. In the top, Rashi says, Tam is chayav. Why? Because you watch with the shmir b'chusa, and it went out into damage. Whereas a muad is going to be potter. Rav Yehuda Imer, Tam chayav umuad potter. Excuse me, let's try that again. When did Rav Yehuda say his din? Leinin shemira dechsivi karai, where the pasuk is referred to, which is regarding the shmir, the guarding of the animal. Leinin tashlumin, but regarding paying, mi shamis lei. Do we know of such a din that a tam is more chamer than a muad? V'atanya, 5 lines down, but we learned in a brayso. Rav Yehuda Omer Yachal Ashar Shaveh Mana Shenaga Shar Shaveh Chamesh Slayim Vanavela Yafa Sela Zenoitel Chatzi Chai v'Chatzi Ames Zenoitel Chatzi Chai v'Chatzi Ames. That in both cases everyone takes half and half. Amrit, so we can explain Chimuad Lama Yatza. What is the reason why the Torah specified a muad? In what way is a muad different? Lahachmir alav, Chimuad Lama Yatza. Lahachmir alav. We have to be stringent with a muad. I like alav. Meaning, we're sort of getting into the fundamental. We know that a muad pays nezik shalim, a tam pays chatzi nezik. The Gemara here sort of figuring out that exact detail. Says the Gemara, so muad lama yatsa. So why did the Torah specify a muad? Lahachmir alav or lahakal alav? What was the reason? Was it coming lahachmir or lahakal? Havi oimer. So we all know lahachmir alav. Then of course a muad is coming to be more machmir. Why? For simply that the muad pays nezik shalim, and the tam pays chatzi nezik. Uma muad ena mishalim elamashe izik. So muad only pays for that which it damaged. Tam akal loy kol shegin. Certainly a tal should only pay that for which it damaged and should not pay more. So it's true that the nizik gets chatzi achai, chatzi amis. However, and then it would come out that the tam is getting more. But how could that be? If the muad doesn't have to pay, how could the tam have to pay? Elam Rav Yechanan. So comes along Rav Yechanan with a noob shot. Ela Amar Rav Yechanan, 13 lines down, first line is Yechanan. Shvach ve'neila nevela ikabenayu. You know the difference between Rameir and Rav Yehuda? It's the shvach nevela, the appreciation of the nevela when it goes up in value. Demar Savar. Rameir is going to hold that what shvach nevela is the nizik have, goes to nizik umar. Savar is going to hold palga, that what? Only half of it. The other half stays by the nizik. V'hainu, now explains the Gemara. Now we can understand the kasha leil Rav Yehuda. Now we can understand a kasha of Rav Yehuda. What was bothering him? Now that we find that the Torah has rachmanas, is compassionate towards he that damaged, in that what? He gets part of the value of the nevela. When it goes up in value, yachol, I would think, shar shavachamish laim shenagach shar shavamana, v'anevela yavachamish chamishim zos, zenot echatzi chav zenot ameis, zenot echatzi chai v'chatzi ameis. That's what I would have thought. Amrit, but in answering that, you can answer why it's not true. Amrit hechan matzinu. Where do we find mazik nischar that the mazik is going to gain? Mazik niskar shezen niskar. Where do we find that the mazik is going to gain that the other one gains as well? Vaimer shalim yishalim. The Torah responds that you have to surely pay. Bailim yishalim in ve'ein bailim noitlin. The owner pays. The owner does not take. So this is what Rav Yehuda originally thought is the reason that the nizik is not going to benefit. The mazik is not going to benefit from the shvach of the nevela after the animal dies. So says the Gemara, "My ve'imer." What is Rav Yehuda doing according to Psuk? Pseida linizik. Avalecha the leg of Pseida linizik, when the nizik doesn't lose, keep going. Shar chamish slayim shar chamish slayim. Vanevelo yafesh shleishim zos. Shakel nami mazik b'shvacha v'aymer shalim yishalim bailim. Shalim bailim mishalmim. Ve'ena bailim noitzlim. That the owner has to pay, and the owner does not take of any of the profits that came through the damages. We conclude part B of today's Shiur. Amalei Ravacha bar Tachliva l'Rava. Im kein motzinu l'Rav Yehuda tam b'shalom yoitzer mechatzi nezik. It comes out that the time is paying too much. V'atayra amru b'achor tzashar achai. V'chatu as kas. Boy, the Torah says, sell it and divide it. So why are you telling me that the time is going to pay more than that? Amar le v'chachus ashar chai v'chatu es katzvay. Islay l'Rav Yehuda, says the Gemara. Rav Yehuda holds pichsa misa machatzin. Rav Yehuda also holds that any depreciation that comes, they also are going to yachas, and you're also going to divide that. He agrees with Rameir that the psukim are teaching us that the mela is only for chatzi, only for half of the losses. How? By selling both that and the living animal. Minole. So we conclude, and he says the Gemara, from where do we know this? Explains the Gemara, Mivigam is ameis, yachetzon. Yes, Rav asks, Rav bar Tachlifa, v'ha'avkur, Rav Yudel zenot of chatzi chai v'chatzi ameis, zenot chatzi chai v'chatzi ameis. So pasuk is already used. Says the Gemara, "Mkei nechtav krav esameis amai vigam shma min otarti." You can learn two things from that pasuk, and we'll stop over here. We'll pick it up from the Mishnah the next year. Siyata d'ishmaya.